Greetings, webinar audience, and welcome to the YouAttest and Riskcop Advisory webinar. Today's topic is CMMC and identity governance. Panelists today, and that we'll see that we have a great presentation today about Robert Emrich, who is the CMMC RP, going over the CMMC regulations. And afterwards, and this is really important, we have a Q&A session. So on the Q&A will be Robert, of course, have the product manager of the wonderful product we'll show you today, Shirazam, and myself. The agenda, really straightforward. Exactly what we were pitching in the LinkedIn and emails that went out was we're going to have Robert, a CMMC RP, go through CMMC. What exactly is it? Why does it matter? Going to go through the framework and how to implement. Then we're going to talk about YouAttest in a way that relates solely to the CMMC and the aspect of relevance, the domain of relevance is in identity governance and auditing. And then we'll go to the QA. All right, let's get started. Robert, take it away.
Okay, thanks, Garrett, and thanks for that great introduction. And welcome, everyone. Glad we have so many participants in today. And I would say that to say CMMC is not a hot topic is probably an understatement. I mean, it's if you've been to any conferences, like I was just in a Denver conference for IIA and ISACA, it was a big topic among some of the other topics in the GRC space. But it's a special one because now the government's actually getting involved. For some of you who do other types of certification and to attest functions, you'll see the government is involved, and we're slowly trying to move this forward. And I say that because it does move a little bit at a snail's pace, but I have a feeling it's going to really pick up as we see it here. And I'm really proud to be presenting with YouAttest, a great tool to be partnered in with. There's a few great tools that you really need in your arsenal to manage your CMMC process if that falls under your purview. So I'm going to go into that real briefly here. This is not meant to educate you on every little aspect of the regulation, but really just to give you a taste of, do I need to worry about this or not? And hopefully if you do need to worry about it, you're kind of moving forward with it. If you're not, rest assured there are resources out there to help you. So one of the things to remember about the CMMC process, and I'll define CMMC since it's an acronym for those who are not familiar with it, it's a Cybersecurity and Maturity Model Certification. So this has been an adaptation from NIST 800-171 framework, and it's been even really going back to NIST 800-53, even some of the earlier aspects of NIST. For the standard, and then this standard has kind of evolved into what we call now CMMC, and CMMC is actually administered and has a board, an accreditation board. It actually is CMMCAB.org if you want to look it up. That's a really good reference point to go into all the aspects of what's entailed in all the different components of CMMC. And I would encourage you to go back there after the presentation to look into those areas if you're not familiar with it. But the biggest thing with CMMC is actually it's a sourcing procurement concern. If you do any kind of business with the government, what the traditional approach before on the left, if you see on the slide, there's three components for the defense acquisition. There's cost, there's schedule, and there's performance. And everyone worries about how much is this project going to cost? How do we bid on this and effectively, have the best price for whoever we're bidding to, either whether it's a prime contractor or the government, the D.o.D, for example. And then when can I actually do the work? Do I have the resources? Those kind of things. How can I schedule this in along with the cost and get it to work? And then performance. Obviously, performance on any contract is important. How are you evaluated? How do you integrate with the customer and the client, and everything kind of mirroring themselves along, including subcontractors. So that was the old approach. Those components are still there and they're still very important. But before you really get into those three pillars now, if you go to the right diagram, you can see that cybersecurity is now not just a little part of a pillar, but now it's the premier component to pass and go, I call it, if you play to play Monopoly, I was liking it to pass and go. You don't pass go if you don't have a robust cybersecurity structure in place. And that's really what the emphasis is. I was just at an event in Baltimore. I was at an interesting event for radiology, chemical weapons, biological weapons, all kinds. It was a really interesting event, but it was funny. We were there for the CMMC piece and had a lot of folks walking up to us, and they were saying, well, it's almost like it's optional and we don't have to worry about it now, but we'll get going on it. And I said, it's not optional. This has been in place since late last year. So if anyone's telling you this is an optional component, you need to take a look at it again because it's really important. Next slide. What I'll go into as I'm going through the process is also talking, where does this head to after you get kind of graded and evaluated? And some of the folks might say, I'm not familiar with this, or what do I need to do? And there's phases of this as you move towards getting security maturity in your environment for CMMC. So we'll talk about that. But one of the key things is being able to get through the process and receiving a score. And a score, it's called the SPRS score, SPRS. It's Supplier Performance Risk System, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But that's basically the database that the D.o.D tracks all companies, whether they be primes, subprimes, and down the chain. Every company that touches data, CUI data or FCI data, which we'll talk about, is responsible for going through this process. So I'm going to go through this quickly so I can get over to YouAttest, my partner, and they can explain a big capability that they provide as far as one of the key areas, security. So we'll go through the model framework here. So the model framework is basically, we start with a model, an overall concept of what do we have to do. And if any of you who work with risk management or audit know, or have worked with some type of assessment, that's your overall, what am I going to be following here? So we're following the CMMC approach, which is adaptation from NIST 800-171. And then there's multiple domains. I'll show you that in a little bit. There's 17 of them. If you've done anything with security or anything on that front, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about for some of the domains. And to be honest with you, if you've done this in other disciplines like PCI, in SOX, and name the discipline, you're definitely familiar with this. This is nothing new, but if you haven't done that before, this may be a little bit of a challenge to get familiar with some of the areas. And then as you get down lower in the where this is, you have capabilities, and there are one or more capabilities that span a subset of 5 levels. And really what these capabilities are is you need to determine as a company, where do we fit under the 5 areas. Some companies may just be a level 1, which is the lowest level. And I'll go into that in a little bit, but basically the lowest level just means you have to maintain basic security requirements. And they're really requirements that most of us should be following in our daily lives, but that's what level 1 is. And they progressively get more difficult as we talk about the types of data that you have to manage it within the environment. And then for a given capability, there are one or more practices that span a subset of the 5 levels. I'll go into all this with some diagrams. Just wanted to at least kind of show you there is a method to the madness here. And then one of the things to emphasize at the bottom, just to say here, is an organization has to continue to perform the activity properly. You have to have it, not only you're saying you're doing it, but you also have to demonstrate you're doing it and showing tangibly you're doing it with artifacts and evidence. That's one of the biggest changes that was brought on with the CMMC Council, is you can't just say, we're good, we're doing it. And the outcomes need to be consistent, repeatable, and of high quality. And we'll talk about that. Okay. So we were talking about the different capability domains, and you can see them here to the left. I don't need to go through them all, but one of the things, there was 14 domains originally, and then they added 3 domains. So the ones that they added were asset management, backup, and situational awareness as a domain. And all these are important. If you ask me, like which one of these is the most important, they're all important. I mean, they all kind of interrelate to one another. It's really, if you're in security, there's a shell approach. You have the outer layer going into the inner layer, and all those layers are very, very important. And YouAttest, my partner, will be able to talk about that, where you go from physical security into like the network, Active Directory, into applications, databases, on down the list. It's all important. So this is all part of where you work with an RP. I'm an RP, registered practitioner, or unregistered practitioner organization to ready yourself if you feel like you need that. It's not required, but if you say, I could really use someone to come in and really help me supplement, augment some of the things that we're doing, identify any gaps that are in the process, that's why you want to hire an RP. And then when you're ready to go and you're ready to take the test, I call it, then you have the C3PAO, that's the certified assessment firm, comes in with certified assessors to allow an assessment to be done. You do an assessment, it's like a test, and you get a grade. It's normally a pass or fail. You obviously want to pass it for the resources that are expended, but you will get there if you follow the process that's laid out and work with an RP, or at least have individuals have that types of experience in your organization. As you look to the right, just to show you the 5 levels I was talking about, there's data really controls what level you're at. So levels 1 and 2, if you have FCI, it's called Federal Contract Information. That's basically if you receive contracts from the federal government for work, for statements of work, for bidding on processes, things like that, that's considered FCI. So if you're receiving that, you're likely under levels 1 or 2, okay? And those requirements are a little less stringent than the higher levels, where you have to have basic cyber hygiene, or we call it intermediate cyber hygiene. There's just some additional requirements as you get to the level 2. And there are other criteria that give you the difference to those levels. That's kind of like another discussion point, but it has more to do with volume and types of data that you're receiving in the contracts. And then if you are a level 3, which a lot of companies who have CUI, controlled unclassified information, CUI, that's a big term, or CDI, controlled defense information, those are specific types of data you receive from the government. And in addition to the federal contracts, you also receive that type of data. I will give you a website later to show how to identify which type of CUI I possibly could have, if you have any. And I have a place you can go to kind of look that up. It's going to make things a lot easier for you than me spouting off all the different types of data here on the webinar. And then there's levels 4 and 5. As you can see, you go from a managed to review to optimizing. I'll be honest with you, the levels 4 and 5 are more specialized. Certain types of government contractors, for example, like maybe a nuclear power plant, maybe a significant aircraft manufacturer may fall under levels 4 and 5. It's almost like the data is getting closer to the secret and top secret level, which those types of data, you have to have a clearance, as many of you probably know if you work in that sector. This data is one level below that, where you don't need a clearance. Although aggregate data, CUI data, if compromised, could lead to national security implications and really could get into the secret or top secret level. I want to just emphasize that. So it's very important this data be protected, which is why CMMC was introduced. Okay, so the process progression. This is just showing how, as you are provided additional types of data, you're entrusted to the different types of data, then your level increases. So as you can see, that level 1 is a very basic level, where you go to level 2, we're under 2 processes, and then 3, 4, and 5, of course. And as you can see, we start getting into more policies, procedures, and then also demonstrating those exist. And then as you adopt governance in your organization, hopefully you're following the governance. And it's really easy to draft something but never follow it. It's like a lot of organizations I work with in my career. It's like, well, we have everything, it's on the shelf, you can pull it off if you really want it. No, now it's really important that you really show organization, or show the assessors when they come in, that our employees have access to these policies and procedures. They can reference these. There's no excuse if something's not followed. There's no excuse if we're not encrypting data. There's no excuse if we're not using multi-factor authentication for access. There's no excuse. We're not doing a revalidation of user rights, which YouAttest would clearly be able to help you with when it comes to revalidation, attestation of security information. And I want to emphasize that they're they're my partner when it comes to those types of functions. And they are also integrated into some of the CMMC workflows that are out there. It's a big part of that. Okay, we'll continue on here. Go to the next slide. Okay, this is just, I'm going to wrap this up so we can go into my partner Garrett and Sher's demo, which is going to be really interesting to show how attestation is a really key part of CMMC. And I really want to integrate that in here in my conversation, that the basic security, although there's a lot of other components to CMMC, security is one of the main things that if you really want to try to automate things as best as possible, you want to have artifacts, you want to show evidence that you have it. One of the modules also is Audit and Accountability, and that's module 3. It's scary when you start to remember the numbers on these things, but you have, access control is 1, then you have your training is 2, and Audit and Accountability is number 3. Well, the access control and audit and accountability require a lot of artifacts, and the YouAttest tool is one of the reason I work with these guys. Is it's a great tool to demonstrate to your outside folks, or it could even be your primes if you're working with prime contractors, that you are following a methodology to revalidate your user access rights, your privilege use, your group policies, all those kind of things. And then one of the things I wanted to point out in here, because again, government uses a lot of acronyms, and if for those of you who don't know a few of these, it's important you pay attention to them. And they're just really an adaptation of other terms we use. So just want to make sure you can kind of equate what are we talking about here. So a lot of you, if you start getting into the space, or if you're already in it, you may have heard SSP. That's your system security plan. That's like your living and breathing document that kind of exists and continues on. I mean, you never really, it's always being updated at all points in time, but especially at the end of a review period, there's an updated SSP. And it's really kind of giving, I call it the state of the union of all your various domains that are out there that we're following for CMMC. And in some of the areas, I see some organizations are very mature in certain areas, and in other areas, they have some work to do. In terms of gaps that are identified, or there's I call them dispensations or risk acceptances. I have clients that are, we find things and we're like, well, how do we handle this? We can't handle this from a cost perspective. We can't handle this from feasibility perspective. There's some reason why we can't make the change right now, but some compensating control has to be put into place just to make sure that company's not exposed. I help a lot of companies with that. The document that actually lists those things, just so you know, it's another acronym that's circled on here, is the POAM. If you hear that, it's the Plan of Actions and Milestones. It actually does stand for something, but you'll hear the word POAM a lot. It's kind of like your gap grid, or your exception grid, or really even your dispensation grid if you talk about risk acceptances. So all these things need to tie together. So if you're going through using tools, I use a tool called Future Feed, which is an awesome tool for CMMC. And then also YouAttest will be a component of that, working to try to tie your attestation pieces together for the overall tool to generate, I mentioned it earlier, your SPURS score, your Supplier Performance Risk System score. You need almost an application to be able to do that. If you don't have that, it's going to be very difficult. You can do it with spreadsheets, but you know how it is with spreadsheets when things start to change, and this area changes quite a bit. So okay, so a lot of folks ask me, how do you prepare for the CMMC? One of the things right now is you should be working on it if you're doing business with the government. Now, there may be some of you that are on the call, you're on here just to learn about it, which is awesome. I was just at a conference in Baltimore, and I was talking to a group out of Philadelphia, and they were telling me they want to do business with the government. And I said, well, one of the biggest things is start working towards your score, start working towards your cyber compliance by following the standards. So they're going to do that. And then I mentioned, if you need some assistance, you want to go with an RP or an RPO. The council is very strict about, if you're not an RP or an RPO, or assessors have to be under a C3 PAO firm. These are all listed on the website. You really are dissuaded from doing anything other than working with a a group that really is familiar with the standards and the requirements. It's just like everything else. I'm also a CPA, so the thing is, you want to do taxes, you deal with a CPA. If you want to deal with CMMC, you deal with an RP or a C3PAO firm. Okay, and just be aware that the certification will look at both practices and maturity. So that's one of the things to emphasize. And there will be artifacts. And I would say if you having more than one artifact for an area is probably better than just having one. In some cases, you may only have one, but I would try to have multiple sources of artifacts for different areas, and having a good way to store those and have those ready when your assessment time comes up. And then just follow the process. Don't try to bypass the process. As I mentioned, the CMMCAB.org, go to that site. That will highlight a lot of the requirements, all the requirements that are out there, and kind of get you moving in the right direction if you're not sure where to go. And then just a couple more things I'm going to turn over to my friend Garrett is having analysis of your data is very important. So it's starting with analysis of what CDI and CUI you have. FCI, I mentioned that's your contracts. And you really need to understand where is that data stored. Obviously, data is electronic or in paper form. I've been at organizations where they have a massive shredding exercise to get rid of stuff that's really out of date. Your records retention is really important there. There's so many things that just go into this. It's hard to like do this small short segment because there's so many pieces, but they're all important. But I think making sure you know what you have, and then going out to the National Archive site, I'll get you that link. It's going to be coming up here in a few slides, is understanding that. And then if you're handling ITAR data or other restrictive data, there's additional requirements. That's actually when you go up to the higher levels, the 4s and the 5s. So make sure you know if you're handling ITAR data. That's very important to know for folks that understand what that is. It's traffic and arms control stuff, in case you wonder what that is, but you would know if you're handling that type of stuff. Last thing is the CMMC accreditation body. Basically, they really oversee this whole process for the certification, the RPOs and RPs. They also are licensed people just to do training. So be careful if you want to bring someone into training, make sure they're accredited with the accreditation board. They really are strict, not having people just do ad hoc training without working through them. Infrastructure, they handle that. Accreditation, credentialing, and then assessment operations, they handle all that as well. There's the archive site I wanted to give everyone. So that's a really important link if you want to take note of that. That will actually help you define whether or not you have CUI data. It is administered and managed by the National Archives of our US government. So that's who's in charge of that. And again, I already mentioned about the accreditation board. Last thing is just with the demo, this will help. I'm not going to go through this in detail, but this is just a sample of a capability under access control. This is an area that I would partner with YouAttest on and ensure that I have comfort on what these controls are leading to. So there's various practices, as you can see, and then there's various capabilities within the domain. So all these this is a good example of what YouAttest can assist with. And I think it's really important when you're really when you're going through hundreds of systems, you're really going to need that from the volume of data you have to. It would make the assessment so much more efficient, whether it being a preliminary assessment or a full assessment. And this just shows just a more abbreviated maturity levels condensed of the areas that they can help handle. But access control is one area, audit and accountability. There were other capabilities that are out there as well that they could assist with as well. But the key thing to remember here is artifact, artifact, artifact. The more you can show, the more you can demonstrate, the better off you're going to be to get the passing score for the CMMC.
Love it, Robert. And please be ready, because I was taking in questions while you were talking. So we'll be reading them at the end. We're old school. We get through the pre-zo, then we do questions, for better or for worse. Okay, my favorite topic to start any webinar, any presentation is, let's talk a little about the word identity governance. Now, let me be honest. I was in this industry, identity industry, for over 20 years. And if you pinged me in a presentation or a demo or a installation and said, Garrett, define identity governance, I'd be like, yeah, I don't know, because I was too busy implementing the actual identity functionality. That's why it's really important before we even start this conversation to define identity governance. Identity governance is about the events, the activities, the artifacts and evidence. Way to go, Robert. I love that. Artifacts and evidence around the implementation of your identity practice. When you come and get audit, they don't want to hear what the admin did this, the admin did this. They want to know who attested to those deployments. There is something called inside hacking, guys, right? And if all you can show them is that the identity manager, the person doing the identity, basically attested to his own roles and all that, that's not proper identity governance. That ain't NIST 853, and it's certainly not NIST 800-171 or CMMC. Okay, so what I'm going to do is talk a little about YouAttest, have the product manager talk a little about it, and then we're going to map. We're going to map it back to the CMMC. So YouAttest is IGA. We use this to do IGA. We use this to attest to the roles and the permissions and the credentialing that you've done after the deployment. Where we use straight out CMMC, but also heavily into SOX, heavy into SOC 2, heavily into HIPAA and high trust for access reviews. Here is our story. We're going to get right into the product share right after this, but this is our story. We walk into enterprises. When I first time I talked to Robert, he's handling the entire CMMC and other types of governances. And I said, hold it. There is this practice within the accreditation of the company of the project that is called access reviews, where someone outside the IT admin has to come in and then push out all the roles, all the permissions to the first line managers and say, do you attest to these roles and permissions? And the truth is, that's usually, even in some of the largest companies, we are dealing with public companies that we are our customers and doing them through spreadsheets. And that's painful, that's laborious, that's time consuming of extremely good talent, and it's also error prone. So we take that process, and that's what we'll show through what Cher's about to talk about us here, and then through the demo. Take it away, Cher.
Thanks, Garrett. Okay, so the first feature, and let me just tell you that we're not going to be covering all the features that are there. We're just going to cover a couple of features over here. And I'm going to go over the audit feature. The first feature is the auto audit feature that we have within YouAttest, which allows users to review an application, a user, or a group campaign. And this can be either an Okta-based or a CSV-based campaign, whichever way you want to go with. And these audits are all done in real time. We have a very friendly GUI that allows users to create these audits and delegate these audit, review these attestation campaigns. And the reviewers can then certify, revoke, and delegate this further down to other members of the team. It is all GUI based, and it takes a few clicks to create an audit.
Perfect.
Second bit, multiple reviewers. So in YouAttest, we have this ability that a task can be reviewed by multiple reviewers, not one reviewer. This is separated with two operators, an and an or operator between this to confirm if either a multiple or individual user is able to complete the attestation task or a campaign. This really helps you if you have separate application owners, resource owners, or something along those lines to review your identities. And this greatly simplifies you going manually and doing this individually with different owners of apps or groups. And these owners can then review these identity rights. Next slide. All right, auto delegation. So this feature allows the users, once an application or group, a campaign is created, this allows the user to delegate this out to their managers who are associated with the users. So the users don't have to do this thing manually. They can just go ahead, use the auto delegate feature within YouAttest and delegate full campaigns across different departments to their managers for them to review their identities. Next slide. Perfect. So once a campaign is created, in YouAttest, we have this auto scheduling features that the user don't have to do this thing every time. They can set the schedule on a monthly basis or on a quarterly basis, semi-annually basis, and a campaign would run, and it would then assign to a user who's going to review that. So this is something which is built in. It's all GUI based. Within a few clicks, you can create an auto scheduling campaign. Just set it once, and the reviewers will be getting their notifications at the specified time. Next slide. Right, the reports. So we have very detailed reports inside YouAttest. We have PDF report, CSV report, Excel report detailing everything which is happening inside a campaign. And we are capturing a lot of data which is required for a number of guidances and a number of
We lose you there, sure. All good. I'll complete this. Here it is this is a great segue right here. Creation of timestamp reports means what? It means artifacts and evidence for the CMMC. So let's jump into the CMMC. Okay, how does it address the IGA? Okay, straight out. I'm going to handle two of the domains here, the access control and audit and accountability. Okay, audit, access control, and we have a full write-up list that maps it, but I'm going to go for one. First of all, access control. Access control is what I said, what gets set up first. That's IAM, identity and access management, where you say, I've got users and I've got some mechanism, whatever you have is irregardless to the audit process, if some mechanism to define these rights. Let's talk about some of the controls around the AC domain. 1003, verify and control limit connections to use an external information system. Verify, right? Verify does not mean that the actual manager of the IAM tool says it is so. What is your artifacts and evidence around that? That's where YouAttest comes in. Document the CMMC practice and implement the access control policy. Okay, where is the evidence that the roles that you have granted have been reviewed by two types of people, by business line managers and also the people who own the resource? This is, we can stop with this slide and this discussion right here. This is identity governance. Identity governance, when it relates to security, handles NIST 853 PRAC-6, which is principle of least privilege. And that's exactly what you are doing in a access review that is done properly. YouAttest is cool. Does it not only in these static reviews, but also has a trigger system. Okay, let's go to one more domain, the audit and accountability. Pretty much sounds like attestation and audit to me, because it is very important. This is really talking about, once again, the CUI, which is the data itself, how we allowing access and how we securing it. So establish a policy. What is your policy? Once again, and that's why I always kicks off these talks about identity governance. Identity governance is not saying, well, I have this tool. I don't care if it's Azure AD, if it's Okta, if it's Ping, etc. How is it being used? How were the privileges granted? And when was the last time you reviewed those privileges? That's your policy and practices. It's your resource plan about auditing. Once again, and that's what Robert and his team does so well. They help you understand that, yes, you have a practice, but let's quantify that practice and document it for the regulations, be it CMMC or whatever there is. And the last one I'm covering in detail, audit record reduction and report generation. That's why I had share end with that, the 5th point, right? Is that's what the product does. And when Tayyab does his demo, he'll show you that's the report that we create for the delivery of this to the auditors. Okay, let's switch over to a demo, Tayyab, right?
Amazing, got it. Thank you for all that. I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen now. Okay, guys, can you see my screen?
Absolutely.
Got it. Okay, so this is the dashboard for YouAttest. This is what you'll see once you're logged into YouAttest. It will show you all of the information that is currently available about your users in a small manner. It will show you the total licenses and your user count, and plus if you have any pending audits or completed audits as well right here. Okay, so as this is a basic tutorial, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over the audits that are performed by CSV, and I will also show you that we have multiple other audits that are actually linked with Okta, and they're pretty well integrated, right? So it's pretty easy to get that YouAttest integrated with Okta, and I'll show you that as well. So first things first, we'll just head over to the API section.
And I think what we're going to do, just because we went long, just show them the how we do the audits which we discussed, D.o.D, and then the
right.
Okay.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's do that.
Then we'll we'll
you
go
know,
over that
us
first.
And Tayyab has great other demos integrated into features like Okta. Yes.
Amazing. Got it. I'll do that. So let's head over straight to CSV audits, and in the CSV section, we will have an option to create a new audit. We're just going to select that, and then we're going to name our audit. It can be,
and this is our most common use. This is dumping your Active Directory. We have a power script that dumps your Active Directory into a CSV, and then this shows what Tayyab would do is upload it, or you would do. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So we're just going to name our audit. Now, for example, I'm going to use an audit for Salesforce. For this example, I'm just going to name it Salesforce, and then I will select the due date, which is pretty important. So after doing that, I'll go ahead and select my Salesforce CSV file, and I'll also show you the file, what it looks like from the inside after uploading this. So once that's done, you'll see this mapping area right here where you have the option to select or map your fields from the file that you just uploaded. This actually helps you eliminate the error that most people face when they're trying to upload a CSV file and it has some missing fields. So we actually took a proactive approach to help people figure this step out and do this more easily, right? So I'm going to show you the file. So this is the basic file that I just uploaded. It has 4 users, right? And the first tab would say username, first name, last name, their email addresses, and if they have multiple roles, we can simply separate them with commas, right? And what YouAttest does is it helps you map all of this. So for user ID, I'm just going to select username. First name will be first name. Last name will be last name. Then again, username will be username. Email, email. And we also have the option to separate them by comma. If you enter multiple roles for a user, we can do that too. So just check this mark and then select roles from here. You don't have to map all of these, just the ones that are relevant for you. So we need the manager's email. We're going to go with manager's email. And then we're going to go with the application name. That's all. And we also have some custom fields. For example, if you want to add another tab to your CSV file, right? And you want it to be specified to a single person or a single application or, multiple applications, you can just map them right here. And the best thing about it is that if you don't like mapping all of these, you can simply save one of these templates and name them. And once you name them, you will have them saved and you don't have to do this ever again, right? If you have similar CSV files that you upload, you can simply go on top here and select the mapping that you save, which will appear right here, okay? And then you can simply click on next. And so for this, we're just gonna go ahead and create the audit first. So let's click on create the audit. Okay, so on top, we see that our audit has been created. We're gonna go inside and check what is the information that's available for us, right? So right now I can see that all of the information has been uploaded successfully, and I can see all the same 4 users, which are right here in the file as well. So what YouAttest does is it actually helps you a lot to make it more easier with giving you the options to get this reviewed by the right people at the right time, right? So how you can do that is by simply clicking on the people you want to get delegated out. And then on the select actions tab right here, you can get that delegated out by clicking on delegate. And it will show you 2 different options. One will be to assign it to a different reviewer or multiple reviewers just by adding their email address right here, or you can assign it to a group. For example, if the user belongs to an ID group or an HR group, you can have this delegated out by that group as well. And you can just write their name, it will pop up and you can click on assign, that's all. And after that, we also have an easier option for you. So the third option is getting this auto-delegated. So what auto-delegate does is it picks up the manager's email that you have listed on the CSV file right here and sends him an email with the link to only this person's review or the person that you've marked for review to the manager, and they will come in and take the information out, get this person reviewed, and revoke or certify if needed, and that's how the review will be performed. So to get ahead, I will show you what the next step looks like so that we have a little bit of more insight of how an access review is completed. So let's just say I will checkmark all of these and go ahead and select the action to certify all of these 4 users, right? So I'm gonna click on apply, and what's gonna happen is it will give me some additional information right here. If you can see that it is showing me what action I took and then my name right here. And don't worry about the audit user. It's just saying that because right now I'm using a demo account to show you what it looks like and I'm logged in as an audit user. But once you're logged in or any of your reviewers are logged in, it will show their name. So this actually helps you keep a lot of paper trail. Plus you will have, the reasons plus know-how of who came in and certified or revoked this person's access. And the cherry on top is that you will also have the timestamp on when this review was performed and what happened or what the action was at that time. So this is all the information that you'll see. And you will also have the option to download a really good report just by clicking on the download report button, and you'll have 3 different formats: PDF, Excel, and CSV. Also, you can print it out if you want. So this will actually help out to close some of the really bigger problems that we have while performing access reviews, such as managers have to, sometimes they have to share screenshots, or sometimes they have to share a document file with multiple users or reviewers at one time, which can actually be a problem, because if the credentials or if any of the information get into the wrong hands, that can be a security risk as well. So a YouAttest actually does help with that, and it makes it really great because it only sends out the relevant information to those people who only need to see it, not to everyone else. And plus, if they get this review, they can also come in and add their comments in this note section right here. So there's one more thing I'd like to show you. So let's head back over to the audit section, right? So I want to show you how a state and time is done, right? So state and time is something like this, that it actually helps you compare something that was uploaded or an access review that was done in the past to something that is being performed right now, or to the users, if there are any new users added to the company, or to the application, you want to compare them, how many were removed and how many were added. So we can also show that. So let me go ahead and do that for you. So let's just say we're gonna do a comparison. So let's just say this is a comparison audit, and we're gonna go ahead and select the due date for this. Then I have another file just like the one that I showed you. I'll upload that in our system. And I'll click on next. So for mapping, as I told you, we can use the same format as we saved earlier from right here, and it will automatically get this filled out. As you can see, username, first name, last name, companies checkmarked, and then application or not. Okay, so after this, what we're gonna do is we're gonna click on run a comparison report, right? Click on this check mark and click on create the audit. After doing this, it will ask me for the source campaign. So I have a source campaign for July, and I want to compare the data that I'm uploading right now with the data that was uploaded back in July. So let's just type in July here. Oh, here it is. I can see it right here. So let's just click on that. And it's also going to give me an option if I want to see change in user status, if they were added or removed, or if their roles were reversed or changed, right? So let's just say I want to see this and I want to see this. So click on create campaign to review changes. Head inside, here is my audit. I'll click on it and go inside to see what changed, right? So in this report, what you want to see is what were the changes that were actually made or performed over the time period of these 3 or 4 months. As you will see, it is going to show me the status has changed right here. It shows me that this user was removed from our system according to the new report, and this user was also removed from our system according to the new report. And this was the user that's added newly. This is also a new user. And then this is a new user. So previously we had these 2 users which were removed, and now we have 3 new users. So this is what state and time does. It actually tells you if there were any roles added which have been changed or not, right here where it says change status. If the rules are not changed, if there are only new users added, it will show it right here as well. So the rest of the step is pretty simple. You can get this delegated out to their manager, or you can get this delegated out to a group of reviewers or a single reviewer. Or you can do that if you're the admin and you have access to review these users, you can do them by yourself as well. And you'll see all of the information after attestation right here. And you can download the report from right here. So this is all for the demo for now. And I'll get back, give this back to Garrett now. Yeah.
And team, that's the product is great and type is great. And all we do is ask you to let us show us to you and better I just get it into your enterprise. Okay. So let me, this will stop sharing. No, let me, you want to stop sharing? Yes. Okay. And here we go. So doing some multiple duties today. Do you see the Q&A screen, guys? Yes.
Yes.
All right. Multiple duties today. So, Robert, how you doing out there?
Pretty good. Good demo.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Times rocks. The product rocks. It just shows it's clean. It does what it's supposed to do in access reviews. So this was, I think you addressed early on, but I think it's a great, hey, let's talk. How do we get going on this? So Robert, when should companies start the process for getting prepared for the CMMC?
Well, as I said, we're kind of in the midst of our compliance now. It's kind of, it's nice to have some time to kind of get ready for it, but we're kind of in the midst. So if any folks on the call are doing business with the government, have government contracts, you should already be moving forward with it. If you're not, that's fine. I mean, we can work with any position, but I mean, right now it's really live, and you're going to start, if you're not already seeing it, you're going to start seeing language in contracts as they come forward and you might not even be able to bid on things to get data if you don't have the score in the database.
So this is a great follow-up question, which I know when, you know, I write many webinars, you write these things. Who usually needs to be involved in a CMMC audit at the enterprise? So who?
You're talking about an actual assessment versus the
I would imply
preliminary?
that probably saying who in the actual enterprise, right? Who do you work with? Who's the roles and the people that actually do this work?
Well, as far as if you're having the actual assessment being done, the formal assessment, obviously anyone in the security group, the chief security officer, or some organizations have other titles, chief technology officer, you know, needs to be involved. But also, as it relates to YouAttest and some of the stuff that was just presented, it's really, you know, the business owners really need to be involved as well, because I give an example. I have a Florida insurance client, and I actually am their risk manager right now, and I'm responsible for making sure that people, key business owners, data owners, I call them information owners, really are going in and really attesting to the things that were just presented. And if those folks are not involved, that's a problem right there. You can't just expect IT to do everything, because I think that's always
I like the way you wrapped it up.
Everyone just looks like, oh, IT, you can handle all this. No, the business needs to be involved too. And I tell my clients, the successful ones, is you need to be able to stand in front of the assessors and be able to speak the language, not have me sitting next to you, because it's easy to say, oh, I'll have my risk manager sit next to me, or I'll have, you know, someone who, quote, is familiar with the process. Everyone needs to be familiar with the process. Now, granted, there's some areas that, you know, you need more of a technical expertise, like a CISSP, to be sitting in with you, but really everyone should really understand the basics. If you don't, then that's a problem. People need to understand separation of duties. People need to understand what privilege use is. Those are all things I would expect most leaders, business leaders, to understand and effectively support controls around those areas.
And it looks like Tayyab's demo did reach someone, because Cher, try to take this one. What resources can the YouAttest state and time, you know, the last part when Tayyab was showing, state and time audit be used for?
Okay, so the state and time, as Tayyab just showed us in the live demo, the resources and identities, as long as they are in a CSV format, we can definitely ingest that data and we can create a campaign. So for us, as long as these resources and identities are in a CSV format, we can create a campaign inside YouAttest.
Yeah, it's anything we export to it. Mostly after Active Directory, but not limited to, right?
Right.
All right. Hey, this is a great question to wrap this up, because this is, when we put this together, Robert, we thought we'd talk 20, 30 minutes and that'd be it, but we used the whole hour. So there's a lot to work here. And this is why this one's relevant. Can CMMC work be reused to other compliances?
Does it work with other disciplines?
Can the work that's done be used to other compliance? So they do.
Yeah, sure. There's a lot of overlap. I mean, absolutely. I mean, I'm not saying you might not have 100% overlap. I'll be honest with you, it really hits. I mean, I'm familiar with all the standards that are out there. I used to be a PCI DSS. No, some of that stuff is more relevant just to credit card data, but I mean, the concepts behind everything really do relate in terms of, you know, encryption, MFA, multi-factor, protecting the data, segmentation. I could name many other things, but it also, as many organizations, I'm sure you can agree with me, are challenged now with ransomware attacks. I've had a few of my key clients that were challenged this year with that. Luckily, they got through it, and it was good news. But I would say they got really lucky. But I mean, this is what we're living in now, guys. It's like, you know, we've got to really protect our environments, and not only that, but we also have to remember, on the supply chain, where do you sit on the supply chain? I just said this to one of my presidents of the company the other day. I said, you know, what happens if you go down? It's not just you going down, it's you affecting the supply chain. It's the downstream and upstream effects. And I think there's a lot of emphasis being looked at now on the sourcing and the supply chain impacts, especially if you're a critical function. I'm sure many of you, all of you, are critical to something in the industries you serve. So you have to really think about what are the impacts, not only to me, but the upstream and downstream. And what happens if I have a data breach as well and I'm attacked? You know, ransomware attacks, I'm telling you, it's such a, you know, it's unpredictable what to do. And it really honestly depends on your carrier, if you have really adequate cyber insurance, and then also your an adequate incident response, which is a big part of this. So I could go on, but I regularly conduct drills in that area, and I know the key players that help out in those areas. And we just experienced some weather issues on the East Coast where I'm at, and I had some water in my basement, and it's always good to know, who do I call to deal with that? You know, who do I call to deal with a ransomware attack? You know, and but you really don't even want to get to that situation. You want to be protected, and you want to have the right tools and the right solutions in place before you ever run into something like that. I think that's why we're speaking to you today, that we as partners can offer that to you, whether it be in CMMC or other areas.
Fantastic way to wrap it up, saying this is not an isolated silo of risk, the CMMC practice. All right. Hey, thanks a lot, Robert. You killed it, Cher, and you killed it, Tayeb. Great day. We look forward to talking to you. That's why the last slide is always our contact information. So enjoy the rest of your day, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks.
Bye.